Welcome to the Crystal Self-Healer Podcast. I'm Carissa Weaver. On this podcast, we blend the magic of crystals with the science of psychology to help you break free from chaos, ditch the overwhelm, and master your emotions so you can have more energy, get more done, and feel better every day. Get ready to unlock your intuition and restore your true power as we cover how you can transform your life using crystals and self-awareness. Are you ready to get started? All right, let's go. What if I told you that working with crystals and tarot was about trial and error? Not about studying and learning all the metaphysical properties or associations with the cards and crystals, but about trying, about choosing to work with something to see what happens. Sure, other people have tried things and there's value in learning from them. But when it comes to having a practice that truly resonates with you, a lot of the confidence comes from actually you picking up your crystals and experimenting. Right now, you might be looking at your crystals or your tarot deck sitting on the shelf thinking, I want to do that for me. I want the peace and clarity. But then the rule creeps in, telling you need to know what the crystal does or get the card interpretation right, so you don't touch them. And you stay in this state of comfortable discomfort where you are fundamentally unhappy and feeling trapped. But it feels safer to stay on the hamster wheel than to face the fear of trying and failing. If you want to start working with your crystals but have been putting it off because you're waiting for that perfect moment or because there's some rule you think applies, keep listening. You may be listening, affirming that you don't trust you know enough, that you don't know all the nuances, meanings, and metaphysical properties. I want to point out that this is where you're creating a rule that applies only to you. Think about how, where, and why the people you admire, working in their own practice, got to where they are. Do you think they just started with perfection, or do you think that they went through trial and error? Sure, they may have had some guidance, maybe from the same places you look for ideas, suggestions, and methods, but do you really think their first attempts went perfectly? What you see happening is that you're holding an expectation that allows for someone else to learn, experiment, and grow, but you hold a rule that doesn't allow that expectation to apply to you. Holding yourself to an impossible standard doesn't just keep your crystals sitting on a shelf gathering dust. It actively wears down your physical body. These rules trigger a massive stress response that I see every day in women who are completely overwhelmed by the details of their lives, their work, because they are carrying the weight of these expectations while ignoring their own boundaries. Your mind would rather have you sit in a state of comfortable discomfort, staying stuck in a pattern that leaves you feeling terrible because it's familiar, rather than face the unpredictable, rule-free space of trial and error. So why do you do this? Why do you build these rules and double standards around what you are allowed to do? It's because rules give your brain a false sense of control. You choose the familiar misery of same old because your subconscious mistakenly thinks it's safer than the unknown. I was talking to a client recently who realized she had created a rigid rule around her habits just to keep herself in check, only to realize the rule itself was keeping her feeling out of control and disconnected from her own intuition. When you create rules like, I must read these books on tarot before I can pull a card, or I must wait until conditions are perfect before I do a ritual. You do it because it protects you from the vulnerability of trial and error. It's an informational hamster wheel. You consume YouTube videos, you scroll Pinterest, you watch someone else do a live reading, and you tell yourself it's research. But in reality, it's a beautifully disguised form of procrastination rooted in self-doubt. The rule requiring your perfection first protects you from the feelings, the emotions that rise up when you think your efforts might come up short. So how do you break the rule? You move out of the passive waiting room. You stop waiting for an outside expert, partner, or a perfect circumstance to show up on your doorstep that hands you permission to trust yourself. And Sunstone is an excellent crystal to support this shift. Sunstone's energy stimulates the sacral and solar plexus chakra, firing up your motivation and creativity to do what you have been thinking about. True confidence isn't something you feel before you start experimenting. It's the data you collect while you do it. Sunstone supports you in stepping into your own leadership, your own authority. When you pick up a crystal or a card and simply say, let's try this and see what happens, you aren't just playing with a tool. You are actively retraining your brain to handle uncertainty. You are breaking the arbitrary rule that says you have to be perfect to be worthy of your own practice. You are shifting from a hyper-vigilant state of forcing control to a grounded space of genuine, soft authority over your own life. Sunstone opens you up to receiving the joy and abundance of your actions in your life. When you decide to break those invisible rules and give yourself the grace to just try, when you allow your practice to be about experimentation instead of perfection, you don't just change how you look at your crystals and tarot. You fundamentally change how you carry yourself in the world. The version of you on the other side of this shift doesn't sit in paralysis at the kitchen counter, crippled by an overwhelming to-do list or an inner dialogue that tells you you aren't ready. You become someone who looks at the chaotic day, a challenging situation, and feels a deep, immovable sense of internal peace and clarity because you finally know how to ground yourself. And that right there is how you know you're doing it right. Because you no longer need an outside expert or perfect circumstance, you stop absorbing secondhand stress, the constant complaints, and the toxic dynamics of the people around you. You are so deeply anchored in your own self-trust that you simply stop caring about what everyone else is doing or thinking, and you stop wasting your life twisting yourself up in knots to keep everyone else happy. When you choose trial and error over perfection, you stop shrinking into the background or running away when your life starts to get big or loud. You get to stand in a place of soft command where you hold your personal boundaries effortlessly because you finally allow yourself to treat your energy as the sacred resource that it is. Understanding the theory of self-trust intellectually will never change your life by itself. You have to actually do it. When I built the Crystal Self-Healer Members Portal, I didn't build it for people who want another textbook or another course to add to their overfilled plates. I built it for the woman who is done with the hamster wheel and ready to get off, but needs a little support in doing that. The portal is about getting from the I've read about to the I do space of your practice. The integration and embodiment of everything you've been trying to master comes from the doing. And you can get that when you join me inside the Crystal Self Healer Members Portal. Depending on where you are, there are 3 levels of support that can help you go from I don't know to I know. Whether you start by simply receiving a collective healing or you're ready for the deep work in mentorship calls, the goal is the same, shifting from studying to doing. Each month we move through the lunar cycle together, setting intentions at the new moon using crystals aligned to the astrological energy, building momentum at the first quarter, releasing what no longer serves at the full moon, and tending to yourself in the fourth quarter. It's not about learning more. It's about doing consistently in a way that becomes second nature. Take that first step in beginning your practice by going to my website, 3charmedgems.com, and come home to yourself through practice. Today's episode has been brought to you by Sunstone and experimentation. May we all experience what is possible for ourselves by trying something new and seeing what happens. Blessed be, my friends. All right, my friends, that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you for joining me here today on the Crystal Self Healer podcast. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, leave a review, and take the What Crystal is Best for You quiz linked in the show notes. Join me again next week as we continue to demystify crystals, how your brain works, and how you can use them so you can have more energy, get more done, and feel better every day.